Hello, everybody. It's David here, of course. If you hear a bit of noise in the background, it's the neighbour or one of the neighbours cutting their grass. Seem to be doing it with a very big piece of machinery from the sound of it. Anyway, I'm sure it won't come over very much, if at all. Looking very much forward to coming to Poland because I've been to a hell of a lot of countries. It must be even 60 odd by now, but never to Poland. So I'm really looking forward to that later on in the year. And I've looked through the questions, very interesting, and I'll get on with them now. Okay, number one. It's supposed to be the final question, but let's start with a bang. Is the humanity heading towards some new, better era? Will paradigms change, revolutionizing civilization, both technologically and ethically, occur in our lifetimes? Well, that depends on the human race, because we are massively at a fork in the road, which becomes more obvious by the hour. I've been talking about this fork for decades now, and it, like I say, becomes ever more obvious. We have the opportunity to stop serving a system that is there to control us from cradle to grave, and stop allowing ourselves to be divided and ruled on the basis of race and religion and culture and all these things. Or we can go on as we are. And if we go on as we are, then we will be in a situation where humanity, as we have come to know it, will not exist, not too many decades from now. And it won't be kind of overnight. We'll be moving towards that day by day by day, and I know that for a fact because we're doing it now. The control system, which we'll get to with one or two of the other questions, has to control human perception. That's how it controls the mass of the people. That's how the few control the many. You can't, when there's a few of you, you can't control a vast number of people physically, although they're moving towards that with their transhumanist technology, which I'll come to. But for now, they can't, because there's not enough of them, and there's far too many of the people they're seeking to control. So what they have to do is to control human perception, because from that everything comes. What people will do, won't do, what they'll support, what they won't support, what they will agree to happening or oppose. All these things come from the perception of people, and what people think of a world event, whether they believe the official story of why that event happened or whether they don't, comes down to perception. For instance, in that case, perception of whether you can believe what authority tells you or whether you have a perception that you can't, which is actually mine. So if you get someone's perception of reality and perception of the world, perception of self, you've got them. You've got their lives, and you're dictating their lives, even though they think they're making their own decisions. And we have, if we look at the history of the human race, we have had a series of eras in which the perceptions of the people have been controlled in different ways, on different bases, but the same principle has applied. So if we go back a little bit, and still today, in many, many areas, the great perception control system was religion. So if you were born into a Christian country or a Muslim country or a Hindu country, the people that dictated that religion in those countries dictated your lives. They told you that what was in these books and what the religion demands that you do has to be done. And often you lose your life if you don't do it. So this has been a blueprint. I've said about religion over the years that it's the greatest form of mind control ever invented. And indeed it is the foundation of all mind control, because what is religion but a rigid, unyielding perception of reality? And so as we've moved into the more modern era, religion has continued. We see it today. But as people started to, in greater numbers, question religious orthodoxy and walk away from it, they didn't walk away from religion, they walked away from the usual perception of what a religion is, which is churches and mosques and synagogues and temples and holy books. But if you look at, for instance, mainstream science today, it's a religion. There is a religious orthodoxy. There is a scientific orthodoxy, just the same as religious orthodoxy. And if you're a scientist and you deviate from that orthodoxy, then you become a blasphemer. And the orthodoxy, your scientific colleagues, turn upon you. They ridicule you. They dismiss you. You might lose, and often do lose, your funding if you're not saying what the orthodoxy of science says is true, or you're asking questions they don't want asked. Then you look at the society in general, and what happens is that from the moment, at least the moment, maybe before, in the womb, from the moment a child is born, the programming starts, the perceptual programming. If it's a religious household, well, the religious programming begins immediately. But even if it's not a religious household, the perceptual program begins immediately. So it starts with the parents, because the parents have been through, of course with honourable exceptions, and there are more and more people waking up to this now, but in general the parents, in whatever culture, it doesn't matter, have been through the process you're about to go through of perceptual programming. They've accepted the perceptual programming, and now they're passing it on to you from the earliest age, because they believe that's how things are. They believe they're doing a good thing by passing the programming on to you, because they don't realize it's a programming. They think it's true. Within a tiny few years now, 3-4 years, this child that's just come into the world is then sent to something called a school. And within 3-4 years, they are sitting at a desk with an authority figure, the teacher, representing the state and the curriculum, in other words, the version of reality of the state, standing in front of them, telling them when they have to be there, when they can leave, when they can eat, when they can go to the toilet, telling them what's true and what's not true, what to believe and what not to believe, how to live and how not to live. And this process of programming, perceptual programming, then goes on day after day, week after week, throughout the formative years of the child, as they grow up and go to the bigger schools and the colleges, and eventually some of them the universities. And what they have been doing throughout their formative years, which forms perceptions for a lifetime if you allow it to, is download the version of reality of the official authority. And all the time that this download is going on, all the peers, all the people around them, other children and young people, their parents, the mass media, scientists, doctors, all these people, politicians, are also telling them that the download sense of reality that they are absorbing is how things are. It's all true. And I call this download the postage stamp consensus, because it is a tiny, narrow, pathetically narrow band of possibility. It's a perceptual prison cell, akin to a postage stamp in its range and its scale. And this is the norm. This is the perceptual equivalent of the holy book. If you're in a religion, an extreme religion that imposes its will upon the congregation and its followers, then that religion tells you that everything you need to know is within the covers of this book. What the postage stamp consensus perceptual download is doing is saying to you, this is all you need to know to live your life and understand the world. And as happens with some people, me being one of them, and increasingly more and more people now around the world, is that they say, well, hold on a second, I'm going to see what exists off the postage stamp. I'm not just going to accept what you tell me. I'm going to check it out and see if it stands up, and you find invariably it doesn't. And I'm also going to pursue my own understanding and not just take everything from you because you say it's true. And when you do that, lots of things happen. First of all, you realize that off the postage stamp, there is a fantastic, infinite amount of knowledge, understanding, perceptual awareness, insight, just waiting to be tapped into and to be explored, that people who live their lives on the postage stamp never see, and indeed ridicule the very existence of, because that's what the postage stamp tells them to do, to laugh and ridicule and dismiss or see as dangerous anything that doesn't accept the omnipotence of the postage stamp consensus. And of course, the other thing that happens is those still on the postage stamp ridicule you. They say you're mad, or they say you're dangerous, just like in the holy book, temple, synagogue, church, and mosque religions say you're a blasphemer and dangerous and an infidel if you dare to question the facts that they allege are facts, but invariably turn out not to be. So we've got this postage stamp consensus, and the vast majority, it's changing, but still the vast majority of young people come out the other end of this programming machine, which we bravely and ludicrously call education. And they go off into the professions of journalism and politics and medicine and science and the corporate world, etc. And they take with them this core programming of what they perceive to be reality, what they perceive to be normal, what they perceive to be the, quote, real world. And then they just confirm to each other in these institutions that the program, the postage stamp program, is true and real and how things are. So a journalist doing a story on a health problem will not go to an alternative practitioner who may have had great success with this health problem. They will go to a doctor who will give them the postage stamp consensus version of that problem and how it can be dealt with, or invariably how there's nothing they can do. The same journalist will not go to someone like me to talk about the nature of reality, they'll go to a scientist, a mainstream scientist, who will give them the song sheet version of reality, which is absolutely nonsensical when you look at the evidence. And so it goes on. This perceptual download rules mass human perception as it rules the institutions that dictate to mass human perception. And all the time as you go through your life, all the people around you, or most of them anyway, the great majority, who've been through the same program and downloaded the same perceptual programming will confirm to you that your download, like their download, is how things are. And if you want to question it, well, you're mad or bad, or usually both, as in my case, often. And all the time, 24/7 now, the mainstream media is reporting the world from the perception of the postage stamp consensus and confirming to you again that what you believe is true. And so it goes on all the way to the end, to the cemetery. And the idea is to get people, the masses as they're called, from the womb to the tomb without ever being aware of the reality that they're experiencing, where they are, who they are, the nature of their own self and their own awareness, and to keep a human life short enough for the great majority of people never to have the time, with all these other things that take their attention, to realize what's being done to them and the reality they're actually entrapped in, because entrapped is the word. So up to this point, as we throw this forward, control of human perception has been via this perceptual download that I call the postage stamp consensus, and the defending of it by the very people who are prisoners of it. I've likened this situation many times to prisoners sitting in a cell, and when one of the prisoners tries to get through the door to get out, the other prisoners run to stop them. No prison guards necessary. This is how it works. Humanity has dispensed with the sheepdog. It doesn't need a sheepdog. Humanity polices itself. No sheepdog necessary. So that's how it's been done up to this point, because from this perceptual download comes the sense of limitation, comes the sense of I can't, and the sense of little me, which means people have a perception they have no power, which is just what the manipulators and the shadows want. But we're now at the point, hence I talk about this fork in the road, where this hidden hand is taking this to the next level. And the next level is where they cease to manipulate our perception and instead become our perception. And this is where AI, artificial intelligence, and transhumanist technology comes in. We are looking at a situation now before our eyes, unfolding by the minute and the hour and the day, in which human awareness is being absorbed, assimilated into artificial intelligence. And it's come to the point now where people like the Google executive, Ray Kurzweil, in the Devil's Playground, which others call Silicon Valley, but it's the Devil's Playground, where people like Kurzweil are openly saying that by 2030, the process will be underway whereby the human brain will be connected to what he calls the cloud. In other words, technological information sources controlled by artificial intelligence. And at that point, it will be the end of humanity, those that allow this to happen, because perception will no longer need to be manipulated in the way I've described. It will be delivered through this brain technology connection and what Kurzweil calls the cloud directly. Humans will no longer have the capacity for any free thought. They will be simply terminals on someone else's internet. And what is happening is that this process, which I call the totalitarian tiptoe, step by step by step by step, A to B to C to D, is happening all over the world. First stage was to get the population addicted to technology that they hold, smartphones, tablets, etc. This is massively already being achieved. Stage 2 is to get the technology on the body, because the goal is to get it in the body in the way I've described. And this is the Bluetooth, it's the Google Glass, it's the Apple Watch, it's the patches on the skin connecting to Wi-Fi. And the third stage is to get the technology inside the body. This is already happening. And I've been warning about this now since the mid-1990s. This was the plan. And we're seeing it happen. So, to put it most simply, this hidden force that's manipulating human society controls the human race by controlling human perception. And it's been on a journey of different stages of this control of perception, through to now where they want to make their final move, if you like, from manipulating human perception to, via technology, becoming human perception. And then you ask the question, as I do in my books and the new one, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, what is AI? I see AI everywhere in the media, AI this, AI that, AI the other. I never hear people say, what is AI? What is this? What is this technological consciousness that is increasingly controlling everything? And as I say in the new book and in the talks, this AI is actually the very force that has been manipulating from the shadows all along. And it is manipulating humanity to build its own technological prison to allow AI, this hidden force, to take over the human mind and through that take over the human world. Because I've been writing in the books for years and years before it actually happened about the plan for what they call the Internet of Things, where everything is connected to the internet. Your fridge, your car, television, everything connected to the internet. Your house via smart meters, etc. And of course this is happening. And it's happening very quickly and ever more obviously. But they have another extension of this, which they call the Internet, not of things, but the Internet of everything. And the additional part from the Internet of things to the Internet of everything is connection to the Internet of the human mind, the human brain. And so everything will be connected to the internet, which brings us to a simple question. Who controls the internet? And that who controls the internet will control everything connected to the internet, including the human mind. And this is what Kurzweil is talking about when he speaks of connecting the human mind to the cloud. This is the true magnitude of this fork in the road that we're now facing, and we can't wait any longer to decide which fork we want to walk down, because time is running out as human society runs towards AI control.